This is Mr. Dietrich. Let's talk about John Dillinger, public enemy number one. Disclaimer: murder should never be condoned or celebrated. I do not condone, celebrate murder or violence of any kind. Now to John Dillinger. During the Great Depression, many Americans despised, hated, loathed the government. They hated banks. They blamed these institutions for the Great Depression, for their suffering, and rightfully so. Their resentment in many cases was justified. They had very good reason to hate the government and the banks for the ways that they ran the economy. These people had lost their farms, their homes. Their families had been divided. There wasn't any work. They were poor. They were struggling. John Dillinger robbed banks. He broke the government's rules. 24 banks that he robbed. What else is on John Dillinger's rap sheet? 2 prison breaks. 10 murders. He's a bad, bad man. And thus, the American people hated him too, right? Wrong. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. And if everyone hates banks and the government, and they did hate banks and the government, and he's fighting against banks and the government, well, they saw him as a Robin Hood character. He was a hero to many Americans. They loved him. They adored him. My grandfather would tell me stories of how he wished John Dillinger would come to Southern Ohio and rob their bank. And many other grandfathers would tell those stories to their kids today. And years have passed since this notorious outlaw has long since disappeared. And yet he is still adored and honored. He's a folk legend, despite the fact that he was a murderer, a bank robber, a prison breaker. How can this be? How can we still see him in a flattering light? Because we like anti-heroes. You root for the Joker, Loki, Walter White. There is this view, regardless of the noble or evil causes that these anti-heroes or villains are up to, for whatever reason, we root for them, despite what they might be fighting for or fighting against. So in the news recently, there has been a tragedy, and it is very bad. And some people have come out and praised this anti-hero, which I don't condone, and I don't celebrate, and I don't believe in. But what is slightly hypocritical is that while we love anti-heroes like John Dillinger and the Joker, fictional or non-fictional, many people came out and shamed those people that celebrated this act of violence. I think it's terrible that people were celebrating an act of violence. People think it's terrible that people were condoning actions. It is plainly wrong. But what is also wrong is the public shaming of those individuals, because those same people doing the shaming probably like John Dillinger, probably had grandfathers that loved John Dillinger. They probably love the Batman series. They probably love fictional series where bad guys do bad things. Full disclosure, don't celebrate death. It's wrong. Also, don't shame people for things that you yourself may do at times. Do not judge others, unless ye be judged. Unless, of course, you hate John Dillinger, and you think he's an ornery outlaw, was a terrible, terrible man, and you stand on the moral high ground, then fair enough, shame away. If you can withstand the judgment, then I say you may be allowed to pass judgment. But for others who don't want to be judged, then maybe think twice about publicly shaming, canceling, judging others. Maybe we should be kind to each other. First of all, being kind means don't celebrate death. Easy to do that one. We got it? Second of all, let's not judge others. Whether they have a reason to do what they're doing or not, we don't need to publicly shame or cancel people because they said something. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe they didn't think about it. Maybe they did think about it. Maybe they truly believe it. But what's the point in the cancellation? What's the point in the blaming? Especially, what's the point if you yourself are fascinated by John Dillinger?